Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. This is a B1 level writing lesson and we're going to be finishing up our unit on giving advice. So it takes a long time to learn English fluently, so read through these ideas and see if you agree. She says, for me, English grammar is hard because it is very different from the grammar of my mother language, Turkish. English is hard because of the spelling. When you see a word, you can't know how to pronounce it, you have to hear it. The vocabulary of English is very large. If you want to speak and understand English well, you really have to learn a lot of new words every day. The little words confuse me: at, in, on, under, by, to, for. I can never remember how to use them correctly. All right, so what about you? See if you can rate yourself on each of the skills. Um, This would be can't do it at all. This is you feel very comfortable doing it. Um, your speaking skills, listening, writing, reading, vocabulary, pronunciation. Talk about how you feel. Don't think about your current level of English. What skills do you enjoy practicing? And what part of learning English don't you enjoy? All right, so we're going to listen to Udam talk about the challenges of learning English. Just going to listen just once, and what different issues does he talk about?
I enjoy learning English, but it's a real challenge for me. I'm quite good at grammar, and I like learning vocabulary, but one thing I find extremely difficult is pronouncing words correctly. There are a lot of sounds in English which don't exist in my language, so I'm always worried about my pronunciation. Sometimes I get confused between words which sound very similar to me, like see and she, for example. I feel relaxed when we practice with a partner or in a small group, but I don't like speaking in front of the whole class. I'm quite a shy person and I feel very stressed and embarrassed when the whole class is listening to me. I'm sure I make more mistakes than I usually do.
So, what issues did he talk about? Well, he talked about pronunciation. He talked about feeling shy and stressed when he had to speak in front of the whole class, but feeling relaxed when he would speak with a partner. All right, so now we're going to listen again, and well, first you'll answer these questions true or false, and then you can listen again to check your answers.
I enjoy learning English, but it's a real challenge for me. I'm quite good at grammar, and I like learning vocabulary, but one thing I find extremely difficult is pronouncing words correctly. There are a lot of sounds in English which don't exist in my language, so I'm always worried about my pronunciation. Sometimes I get confused between words which sound very similar to me, like see and she, for example. I feel relaxed when we practice with a partner or in a small group, but I don't like speaking in front of the whole class. I'm quite a shy person and I feel very stressed and embarrassed when the whole class is listening to me. I'm sure I make more mistakes than I usually do.
All right, so there's the answers. Hopefully you got those correct. All right, so now here is the text of what Udam said. So, what do you think he should do, and what do you think he shouldn't do? So, think of some advice for him. How could he um, learn how to pronounce words? How could he learn to tell the difference between similar words? And how could he be less stressed when the whole class is listening to him? All right, so now we're going to match the problem with the advice. You can pause the video, try that on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. So it's hard to remember new words. Well, that would go with B. Maybe you can start your own dictionary. Try writing sentences with new words too. This is a good way to learn them. I feel shy when I have to speak in front of others. Maybe remember that it is normal to make errors. Wait, no, sorry, that's wrong. That would be, it's a different one that's better for that one. So here we go. Here. So I feel shy when I have to speak in front of others. Practice speaking to yourself in front of the mirror. This can make you feel more confident. I make a lot of mistakes. That would be C. Remember that it is normal to make errors when you learn. Don't focus on this because people can generally work out what you are trying to say. And finally, it's difficult to understand native speakers. You should always ask native speakers to slow down or repeat what they said. Even native speakers ask other native speakers to do this. All right, now we're going to listen to Sergey, and then you'll choose the option that best summarizes his ideas.
I don't really like learning English, but I work for an international company, so it's important for my job. My listening skills are good, and I can speak English quite fluently, so I don't feel embarrassed when I have a conversation in English. In fact, I feel very relaxed, but the problem is that I make a lot of grammatical mistakes, and I'm not very interested in spending my free time studying grammar rules.
Okay, so he's learning English because of his job. He wants to improve his grammar, but he doesn't like studying grammar rules. So this one would be the best option to summarize what Sergey said. So Sergey talks about another thing that is difficult to learn in English. She'll be answering the question, what does he find difficult? And do you agree with Sergey?
Another area I find difficult is phrasal verbs. Do you know what phrasal verbs are? Verbs which have two or three parts, like give up or come up with. In my opinion, phrasal verbs are very confusing. I get frustrated when I can't remember whether it should be put on, put off, put over, put away, or whatever.
Right, so he said that he found phrasal verbs difficult, and do you agree with him? Do you find phrasal verbs difficult? All right, so Sergey's teacher writes a response. So we'll read the response and then we'll answer these questions. You can pause the video and read on your own, or you can follow along as I read. First, it's great to hear that you feel relaxed when you have a conversation in English. The fact that you can communicate effectively in English without feeling embarrassed is a real achievement. Congratulations on reaching this level. Second, I can understand that you don't like studying grammar, that you don't think studying grammar rules sounds very interesting. You will be pleased to hear that I don't think you should spend your time reading grammar books. You mentioned that you feel relaxed when you speak English, so perhaps you should try doing some individual conversation classes online. As an example, before you start the first class, you should explain to your teacher that you want to improve your accuracy. Then, while you're having a conversation, the teacher can focus specifically on correcting your mistakes. With this kind of correction, your English will start to become more accurate. So, the first part of the response doesn't focus on the problem. Why do you think the teacher started like this? Well, it's always good when you're giving advice to start with something positive. So she focuses on the fact that he feels relaxed, he can communicate, doesn't feel embarrassed, and that, he's done a good job in learning English so far. And then look at the first sentence of the second paragraph. This sentence paraphrases Sergey's own words. The sentence expresses Sergey's words in another way. Why does the writer do this? So I can understand that you don't think studying grammar rules sounds very interesting. Well, the writer does this to let Sergey know that she understands what his concern is and that, she is sympathetic and wants to help him with his problem. And what advice does the writer give to Sergey? Um, Maybe trying some individual conversation classes online. All right, so in responding to a problem, we explain that we understand the problem before giving advice. So here's the rest of the teacher's response. A lot of students feel confused when they try to learn phrasal verbs. It's important to remember that native speakers use phrasal verbs a lot, especially in informal English. For this reason, I think you should try to learn the most common ones at least. Perhaps use a different strategy. For instance, I don't think you should try to learn all the phrasal verbs with put. This kind of approach can be especially frustrating. There are lots of websites that teach phrasal verbs by topic, and this makes them easier to remember. For example, don't try to learn too many at once and spend some time every week checking that you still remember the vocabulary from previous lessons. So it says to look at the expressions in bold. The author uses these at the beginning of a sentence to prepare a reader. So for this reason, telling why, for instance, and for example, is giving illustrations of the point that she's trying to make. So in your native language, what expressions have the same meaning as some of these phrases? All right, so now use the phrases to show a logical order and to give examples. You can pause the video, try this on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. For example, many students feel that their pronunciation is not good. For instance, many students of English have trouble with the TH sound in think and the W in water. Pronunciation takes time, but eventually you will feel more comfortable when you speak. Let's see. Maybe for instance, I'm not sure on these. We better check the answers here. So first, each week you can concentrate on one or two sounds of the language. You can find lists of words with this sound and you can practice them. This is a good way to make progress. As an example, www.englishsounds.com has lists of words that can help you. Second, it sometimes helps to learn words in groups. When you say a word by itself, it's hard to say it correctly. For this reason, I think it's good to say short sentences again and again. Instead of saying the word with by itself, practice sentences like I played football with them or I like talking with my friends. This will help learn the sounds more naturally. All right, so here's a basic structure to use when you're giving a response that provides advice. So first, you want to open your response with a positive sentence. Second, use other words to state the problem that the person has. Third, show that you understand the problem and give an example of what the person could or should do. Next, provide another example of what the person should or could do. And finally, close the response with a positive sentence. All right, so you're going to listen to Udam again and take some notes so that you can prepare to give him some written advice. So you want to be listening for what are the positive things that he says about learning English, what are the two problems that he mentions, what advice can you give him for each of his problems, and what examples can you give?
I enjoy learning English, but it's a real challenge for me. I'm quite good at grammar, and I like learning vocabulary, but one thing I find extremely difficult is pronouncing words correctly. There are a lot of sounds in English which don't exist in my language, so I'm always worried about my pronunciation. Sometimes I get confused between words which sound very similar to me, like see and she, for example. I feel relaxed when we practice with a partner or in a small group, but I don't like speaking in front of the whole class. I'm quite a shy person and I feel very stressed and embarrassed when the whole class is listening to me. I'm sure I make more mistakes than I usually do.
All right, so hopefully you have some notes answering these questions. And then write a response to Udam and use the structure that we talked about. Remember to use these words and phrases when you provide examples. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.